Thank you. Welcome back to you as well. Let's see what happens when I do that. Did it show me waving at you? I can also wave at you in real life, which to me makes more sense, but live your life, you know what I'm saying? Live your life. Live your life. Here in Duckburg, race cars, lasers, airplanes. Why is the DuckTales theme song all of a sudden stuck in my head? Does anyone... I don't super understand that one. How come it doesn't give me, very much Naisa, how come it doesn't give me the option to wave to everyone? It only gives me the option to wave to like every fourth person. You know what I mean? I don't really get that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense. All right, we'll just give everyone a chance to get back in, then we will start book 5. Good coffee. It's good coffee. All right. So, book 5 is called An Author's Odyssey. Dun dun dun. Picking favorites. Are you TikTok? Yeah, right? It makes no sense. And also, why are we supposed to be waving? Well, it just doesn't give me the opportunity to wave to everyone. And it also just filtered Jen for saying picking favorites. Like, I don't... What about that is a problem? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, what about Jen saying picking favorites needs to be filtered? Who is that hurting, first of all? Second of all, like, what? Like, it's not... She didn't curse? Maybe, Jen. Yeah, I physically do that, right? Yeah. I have to hit a little button. I got the shared link, but it said live ended. Well, we did. So we finished the other book, that half a chapter, and then we started a new live to start the new book, Anya. So that is what happened. Oh no, my book got a little mangled here. Sad. Okay, well, let's get started while this girl is still asleep. So I want to show you some of the amazing things in this book. Connor Bailey's short story portfolio. You know, we wanted to have a clean cut for the recordings, Anya, so that when I upload them, that we can have, because, you know, like we do it by book, you know. How cute is this? Table of contents. The stories in Connor's portfolio are called Starboardia, The Galaxy Queen, The Ziblings, and with a Z, not siblings, but Ziblings with a Z, and Blimp Boy, or The Adventures of Blimp Boy. So here we go. To Will, for playing hours of How Do You Spell, What's Funnier, What Would a 10-Year-Old Understand, and other interactive games while I write. Thank you for being my secret weapon. Quote, a writer is a world trapped in a person. Victor Hugo. By the way, if you put up emojis in the middle of the word, interesting. Interesting, Brittany. So if there's a word that normally gets you filtered, throw a smiley face in the center of it. I know, it's so funny, Naisa. That's the thing, like Naisa and Anya and I have been like with, and Ray have done these already, but like there's something about revisiting it that like, chef's kiss. Prologue, the favorite student. How, woo, that worked, Amanda, actually. Willow Crest Unified School District spared no expense celebrating the retirement of a beloved principal. The community banquet hall was decorated so elegantly that there wasn't a trace of senior bingo from the night before. The tables were dressed with lacy tablecloths, floral centerpieces, and battery-operated candles. Each place setting had golden plates and more silverware than the guests knew what to do with. Teachers, counselors, janitors, lunch ladies, and former students showed up in droves to say goodbye and wished the principal well. My favorite thing is to reread. Oh, it's totally, yeah. It's a totally different experience. Yeah, I completely agree with both Anya and Naisa with what they're saying. The retirement party was one of the classiest gatherings any of these people had ever been to. However, as the guest of honor looked around at all the long faces for the occasion, it seemed more like a funeral than a celebration. The newly appointed district superintendent tapped his champagne glass with a spoon, and the hall became quiet. May I have your attention, please? He said into the microphone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Brian Mitchell, and as you know, we're here to celebrate one of the finest educators that Willow Crest Unified School District has ever had the privilege of employing, Miss Evelyn Peters. Her name was followed by the way, Stephanie. That's kind of amazing, right? Because what a legacy to have in your name. What a legacy. I know, me too, right? There's still stuff like, you see me gasping. Guys, every time you see me gasp, that's not fake. Like, it means I forgot something was gonna happen and then I'm reminded. Like, I've told you guys before, one of my favorite things, oh, no worries, Susan, we're just starting, we're like half a page into this book. And also you're on a cruise, so like enjoy yourself. One of my favorite like skills that I have is the willing suspension of disbelief. And if I want to relive something like a Broadway show or whatever, I can experience it again and feel that joy again. And like, I need that, you know? The willing suspension of disbelief, I think, is a real skill, you know? It makes it good all over again, no matter how many times you read it. And look, you all know how I feel about the author of Harry Potter. We don't have to talk about that. But when we didn't know that she was a piece of CRAP, I used to reread the books all the time, and it was wonderful every time, you know? And that's how I feel about this. Okay, let's keep going. Her name was followed by a warm round of applause. A bright spotlight hit Mrs. Peters, who was seated at the front of the room beside Dr. Mitchell. I thought it was just, yeah, right, seriously. She smiled and waved at the guests, but secretly she wished she had never agreed to this gathering. Special attention and compliments from her colleagues always made her feel uncomfortable, and tonight it was all just getting started. I've been asked to say a few words about Mrs. Peters, which honestly is very intimidating, Dr. Mitchell said. It doesn't matter what I say, because rather than taking any praise to heart, I know she'll be listening to my speech for grammatical errors. But the guests laughed, and Mrs. Peters giggled behind her napkin. Anyone who knew her knew this was true. It's easy to say someone's good at their job, but I know for a fact that Evelyn Peters is an incredible educator, Dr. Mitchell said. Nearly 3 decades ago, long before she became a principal, I was in her first 6th grade class at Willow Crest Elementary School. Prior to meeting her, my childhood had been very difficult, and by the time I turned 10, both of my parents were in prison, and I was bouncing in and out of foster care. When I stepped into Mrs. Peters' class, I could barely read. Thanks to her, by the end of the year, I was reading Dickens and Melville. Many of the guests clapped, making Mrs. Peters blush. Most of them had lived or witnessed similar stories. We did not get along at first, of course, Dr. Mitchell said. She pushed me harder than anyone ever had before. She gave me extra homework, she made me stay after school and read aloud to her. And at one point, I was so tired of the special treatment that I threatened to graffiti her house if it didn't stop. The next day, she handed me a can of spray paint and a card with her address on it and said, "Write whatever you like, just make sure it's spelled correctly." The hall erupted with laughter. The guests looked to Mrs. Peters to confirm the story, and she nodded coyly. Mrs. Peters taught me so much more than how to read, Dr. Mitchell said, and his voice began to break. She taught me the importance of compassion, of patience. She was the only teacher I felt cared about me as much as my grades. She got me excited to learn and inspired me to become an educator. We're very sad to see her go, but had she applied for superintendent instead of retiring, we all know that I never would have been hired. Mrs. Peters wiped her glasses to distract the guests from the tears forming in her eyes. Had it not been for her reception, she might never have acknowledged to herself all the differences she made in so many lives. "Please join me in a toast," Dr. Mitchell said, and he raised his glass, "to Evelyn Peters. Thank you for inspiring and teaching us all. Willow Crest Unified School District just won't be the same without you." Same, Naisa. I had 2 also, and they're wonderful. I'm still friends with them. Everyone in the hall raised their glass to toast Mrs. Peters, and when they finished, Mrs. Peters took the microphone and raised the glass back to them. "Now, please, let me say a few words," she said. "My late husband was also a teacher, and he gave me the best advice one educator could give to another, so I'd like to pass it on to all of you in this case, in case it's my last chance." Everyone in the hall sat on the edge of their seats, especially the teachers. As teachers, we must not guide our students to become the people we wish them to be, but we must elevate them to become the people that they were meant to be. Remember, the encouragement that we give our students may be the only encouragement they ever receive, so don't use it sparingly. After 25 years of teaching grammar school and my brief administrative experience, I can assure you that my husband was absolutely right. Shh, shh, shh. And since that is the best lesson I can teach you, I'll say for the last time, class dismissed. The conclusion of her speech was met with a standing ovation, and after a few moments of applause, Mrs. Peters urged the guests to sit, but it only made them cheer louder for her. The lights were dim, and a screen was lowered. Dr. Mitchell and Mrs. Peters took their seats and watched the group as photos of Mrs. Peters' classes were projected, and started with her very first sixth grade class from almost 30 years before. As the slideshow commenced, the former students laughed at their 11 and 12-year-old selves and their ridiculous hairstyles and the clothing they had sported in earlier decades. Especially noted was how little Mrs. Peters had changed over the years. In every picture, the educator's hair, glasses, and floral dresses were exactly the same. It was as if Mrs. Peters were frozen in time while the world changed around her. The slideshow made Mrs. Peters more emotional than anything else that night. It was like watching a family album flash before her eyes. She remembered the name of each face she saw, and most of the students she still knew personally or knew what they had gone on to become. There were a few that she had long lost contact with completely, though, and it was painful to have been so close to a child at one point and later feel as if they had disappeared into thin air. Mrs. Peters' students were the closest thing to children that she had ever had. She hoped that they were all happy and healthy wherever they were. If she was no longer a staple of compassion and guidance in their lives, she hoped that they had found someone else who was. Evelyn, Dr. Mitchell whispered, and Mrs. Peters found it strange for a former student to address her by her first name, even if he was the superintendent. Yes, Dr. Mitchell, she whispered back. Did you ever have a favorite student? He asked with a grin. I mean, I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but is there one child who stands out to you? I mean, besides me, of course. Mrs. Peters had never thought of such a thing. She had taught over 500 students in her career and remembered each of them for different reasons, but selecting a favorite had never been a priority for her. Oh, well, I've definitely enjoyed some more than others, she said, but I could never choose a favorite. That would require judgment, and I always thought judging a child was like judging an unfinished piece of art. Every child enters the classroom with his or her own set of obstacles to face. Whether behavioral or academic, it's a teacher's job to identify those issues and help the student overcome them, but never belittle the student for them. Dr. Mitchell had never thought about it that way. Even in adulthood, he was still learning a thing or two from Mrs. Peters. I might be superintendent, but I'll always be your student, he said. Hey, Liz, we're just starting the next book. We're in the prologue right now. Oh, Dr. Mitchell, Mrs. Peters laughed. No one ever stops being a student in the classroom of life. Even though she thought not answering was the best answer, Mrs. Peters quickly realized that she was indeed mistaken. Oh, no, you're totally fine, Liz. A picture appeared on the screen of her final sixth grade class 3 years earlier. She scanned the faces of her former students and stopped at a pair of 12-year-old twins named Alex and Connor Bailey. Alex's hair was neatly tucked behind a pink headband, and she held a stack of books close to her heart. A large grin filled her face because school was her favorite place in the world. Her brother, on the other hand, was puffy-eyed and his mouth hung open. He appeared to have just woken up from a nap and had no clue the photo was even being taken. Mrs. Peters laughed because they looked exactly how she remembered them, and the picture reminded her of how much she missed them. Hey, Isabella. Both of the Bailey twins had unexpectedly transferred schools before Mrs. Peters had had the chance to say goodbye. You don't want to be awake, do you? No, that was such a short nap, honey. That was so short. You don't want to be awake. Let's go to sleepies. You don't want to be awake, do you really? Aww. What about a little more sleepies? You said no? No more sleepies? You want out? No more sleepies? Okay, okay. All right. Hold on, give me a second, honey. Mommy will get you out. Mommy will get you out. Okay. Whee! There you go. Hi. I'm coming. Just give Mommy a second. Can you give Mommy 1 minute to come? Mommy's coming, honey. Just give Mommy 1 second, okay? Okay? Mommy's coming. Okay. That lamp is awesome. Secret Husband got that many years ago on Etsy, he says. Okay. Okay, Santa slide time. 3, 2, boom! Pew. All right. There we go. Okay, can you play with something else? Here, what about this? Wow, where do all these blocks go? Can you help me put the blocks back in their home? This is a orange circle. Where does the orange circle go? Where does it go? You want to tell me? You want to tell me where it goes? Mommy will keep reading, okay? Okay. Both of the twins unexpectedly transferred schools before Mrs. Bailey had a chance to say goodbye. Alex went to live with her grandmother in Vermont halfway through 7th grade, and then Connor joined her the following year. Are you dragon? You dragon? What about puppy? Woof woof. Even though their mother still lived in town, Mrs. Peters had been assured they were better off with their grandmother. As far as Mrs. Peters knew, Alex moved away to attend a school for advanced learners, but it was still a mystery as why Connor had gone to join her. The year before he moved, Connor had run off during a school trip in Europe with another student, Bree Campbell. The stunt seemed entirely out of character for both of these students who had clean records up to that point. Had Connor stayed in Mrs. Peters' school, they would have been punished appropriately, as Bree had been. But Mrs. Peters never thought it warranted a transfer to a completely different school district. The entire situation was very suspicious and personally upsetting for Mrs. Peters. Connor had just discovered his natural talent for writing, and he was excelling in school for the very first time. Wherever he was now, Mrs. Peters hoped that Connor had found someone else to encourage him. No, it's just the same, Anya. Maybe just because I have it up so often you're not used to seeing it down. To her, there was nothing worse than a student's wasted potential. The slideshow ended and dessert was served in the banquet hall. That's right. After a dozen more complimentary speeches from former colleagues and students, the event finally came to an end. Mrs. Peters loaded her car with stacks of farewell cards and armfuls of bouquets. She was looking forward to a quiet night at home so she could decompress from the long and very emotional evening. On her way home, she unintendedly drove past Willow Crest Elementary School, and Mrs. Peters slammed on her brakes and parked her car. The school reminded her of one more goodbye she had to make before officially retiring. Mrs. Peters dug through her large purse to find the old keys to her 6th grade classroom. Luckily, the locks hadn't been changed, and she entered room 6B without any trouble. But instead of feeling a wave of nostalgia like she expected, she hardly recognized the dark room. The current teacher decorated it very differently than Mrs. Peters had. The desks were arranged in groups instead of rows. The walls that used to hold shelves of dictionaries and encyclopedias were now lined with computers and tablets. The posters of world-renowned authors and scientists had been replaced with posters of celebrities holding their favorite books that Mrs. Peters wasn't entirely convinced those people had even read. Mrs. Peters felt like an actor stepping onto someone else's stage. She couldn't believe how much a classroom could change in so little time. It was as if she had never taught there at all. The only similarity was the teacher's desk, which was kept in the exact same place. Mrs. Peters kept her desk there for 25 years. The retiree sat in the chair behind it and looked around the classroom bittersweetly. She hoped that the decor wasn't any indication of something other than the new teacher's taste, but she hoped the same morals and values that she had taught were still being shared in her absence. She hoped that the new technology was enhancing those lessons, not replacing them with lesser ideologies. Most of all, Mrs. Peters hoped that the new teacher cared about teaching just as much as she did. Before getting depressed about it, Mrs. Peters reminded herself that it would have felt worse if there hadn't been any change. After all, it was thanks to teachers like her that the current generation was progressing so effortlessly into the future. And just like all the teachers who had come before her, it was time that Mrs. Peters passed the torch to her successor. She hadn't expected letting go would be so difficult, though. "Goodbye, classroom," Mrs. Peters said. "I'll miss the lessons we taught together, but even more, I'll miss the lessons we learned together." And just as she stood from the desk to leave, a sudden gust of wind circled the classroom. Papers blew off the walls, and a vortex circled the center of the room. A bright flash illuminated the dark classroom like a bolt of lightning, and Mrs. Peters dove under the desk for safety. Peeking out from underneath the desk, Mrs. Peters could see 2 pairs of feet appear out of thin air. One wore tennis shoes, and the other wore a pair of sparkling slippers. Huh, this looks a lot different from when we were 6th graders, the familiar voice of a young man said. Ah, man, how come they get computers and we didn't? I would have stayed awake a lot more if we had had computers. Sign of the times, another familiar voice said, that one of a young woman. I'm sure it won't be long before they stop building schools altogether. Every kid will be plugged into a device and they'll be taught from home. Can you imagine anything worse than that? Let's focus on one crisis at a time, the young man said. You look around the computer desks and I'll look around the filing cabinets. My stories have to be in here somewhere. The feet split up into different corners of the room, and Mrs. Peters knew that she had heard those voices many times before, but she couldn't picture the faces that they belonged to. If they weren't in her old office, what makes you think that they'll be in here? The young woman asked. Oh my God, seriously, Nagisa. It's the only place that we haven't looked, he said. Teachers are sentimental. Maybe she put them in a time capsule or something. I want to look everywhere before we start breaking into her house. Mrs. Peters couldn't take the suspense any longer. She slowly got to her feet and peered over the desk, and as soon as she identified the newcomer, she let out a gasp, causing both of them to jump. Mr. Bailey! Miss Bailey! She said, and the twins had grown so much since the last time Mrs. Peters had seen them, especially Alex. Mrs. Peters couldn't help but gawking at the long, beautiful gown that she wore. It was the color of the sky, and it sparkled as she moved, like something out of a fairy tale. Alex and Connor Bailey were just as stunned to see their former teacher as she was to see them. Oh, hi, Mrs. Peters, Alex said with a nervous laugh. Oh my gosh, long time no see. Mrs. Peters? Connor asked, what are you doing here so late? Mrs. Peters crossed her arms and glared over her glasses at them. I was about to ask you the same question, she said. How did you get inside without a key? And where did all that light and wind come from? Are you in the middle of some sort of prank? The twins stared at each other for a moment of silence, but neither knew what to tell her. Without any other ideas, Connor began prancing around the room, waving his arms through the air like seaweed. Mrs. Peters, this is a dream, he sang. You ate bad sushi, and now you're having a nightmare about your former students. Leave this classroom before we manifest into larger school supplies. Mrs. Peters scowled at his terrible attempt to fool her, and he quickly dropped his arms to his side. I have a perfectly good grasp on my conscience, Mr. Bailey. Sorry, on my consciousness, Mr. Bailey, she said. Now, will one of you please explain how you appeared in this classroom, or do I need to call the police? Explaining the situation to someone in the other world should have been an easy task by now, but as the twins stood across from their former teacher in their former classroom, they felt like they were 12 years old again. Oh, honey, what's that? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's okay. Mommy will take care of it. Hold on. Hold on. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. It's just a little bit of spit up. That's okay. You drink a lot of milk before, huh? It's okay to have a little spit up. It's okay. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. It's perfectly okay, but we don't want to touch it, right? Yucky. No touchies. It's okay to happen. We just don't touch it, okay? All done. All done. It's okay. Here. Look at Mommy. You're okay. You're okay. There you go. All better? Did you drink too much Milkies? That's Mommy's fault, huh? Too much Milkies? I'm sorry, sweetheart. Okay. Okay, do you want to play with this? What's over here? Look. Oh, what's this one? Wow. So nice. She's okay. It was just a little bit. It wasn't like throw up or anything. It was just like a little bit of spit up. Explaining the situation to I already said that. Mrs. Peters was so impossible to lie to that she would never believe the truth. We would tell you, we really would, but it's a really long story, Alex said. I have a master's degree in English. I love long stories, Mrs. Peters said, and the retiree's stern expression suddenly faded from her face. She looked back and forth between the twins, almost in disbelief, as if she had figured out the truth all on her own, but was having difficulty accepting it. Wait a second, Mrs. Peters said. Does this have anything to do with the fairy tale world? The twins' jaws dropped in perfect unison. This was the last thing they expected to come out of Mrs. Peters' mouth. It was like they were in a film that had suddenly skipped a scene. That's correct, Connor said. Oh, well, that was easy. Connor... Wait, Alex... Sorry. Turtles don't growl, honey. That turtle says, "You so totally rock, dude." Right? Turtles don't growl. They go, "You so totally rock, dude." Yeah. Alex gave Connor a dirty look, certain there was some information that he had forgotten to share with her. Connor, you told Mrs. Peters about the fairy tale world? Alex asked. Oh, is that Dada? Say hi, Dada. Wow. Did we wake you up?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Just woke up on my own.
Okay. Do you want to sit in here with her, or?
Oh yeah, you can sit out there. Yeah, that's fair. Watch your head.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna get up slowly, and I'll come away from this, and you guys can play, so she doesn't have to be. Okay. Ugh. Okay. We're reconfiguring once more. I know, sweetheart, I know. Okay. Do you want me to get your coffee?
Oh, no, good.
Okay. It's in your favorite cup, though.
It's okay.
No, I said it's in your favorite cup.
Oh, yeah, it's it.
Okay. What? Oh, you're welcome. Of course not, Connor said. It was probably Mom. She had to explain the transfers to her somehow. And when the twins looked back at Mrs. Peters, she was making a face that they had never seen her make before. Her eyes were large and glistening, and she covered a huge smile with both hands. The retirees looked a little bit excited, like a little girl. Oh my word, Mrs. Peters said. After all these years, I finally know it was real. I can't tell you how much time I've spent wondering if this was a dream or a hallucination, but you appeared just like she did, in a dress, just like hers. The twins could not have been more confused now. What was real? Connor asked. Who are you talking about? Alex pressed. When I was a very little girl, I was sick in the hospital with pneumonia, she said. And late one night, while the nurses were busy with other patients, a kind woman wearing a dress just like yours appeared in my room, she said. And she brushed my hair and read me stories through the night to make me feel better. I figured she must have been some sort of angel. And when she left, I begged her to tell me who she was. And the woman told me that she was the fairy godmother and she lived in the fairy tale world. The twins could not believe their ears. They had known Mrs. Peters for years, but never knew she had any knowledge of the fairy tale world. Whoa, small world, Connor said. Yeah, that woman was our grandmother, Alex said. She and the other fairies used to travel into this world and read tales to children in need. Grandma said the stories always gave the children hope. Mrs. Peters had a seat on the desk and held a hand over her heart. Well, she was right, she said. Once I was healthy, I devoured fairy tales for the rest of my childhood, and I even became a teacher so I could share those stories with others. No way, Connor said. That's why you made us do reports on fairy tales when we were your students? That's so meta. Connor, I hate when you use that word, Alex said. I agree with Mr. Bailey. It is meta, Mrs. Peters laughed. Words can't describe how grateful I am to finally know the truth. All this time, you weren't living in another state. You were living with your grandmother in the fairy tale dimension. That explains the abrupt transfers, why your mother was so vague about the details, and I'm assuming it all has something to do with Mr. Bailey's abandonment of the school trip to Europe? Guilty, Connor said sheepishly. I'm not a delinquent after all. And your grandmother, is she still around? Mrs. Peters asked. She seemed so happy that the twins didn't want to break the news to her. Actually, Grandma passed away a little more than a year ago, Alex said. Yeah, but it was after she slayed a dragon, Connor bragged. That's another long story that will only lead to another long story, but trust me, our future biographer is going to have his hands full, and right now we really don't have time to explain it. We're actually here for something really important. Oh, Mrs. Peters said. Remember when you saved my short stories in a portfolio for when I started applying to college? Do you happen to know where those are? He asked. You don't have your own copies? Mrs. Peters asked. No, they were handwritten, Connor said. It was painful enough writing the originals. My hand couldn't take making a copy. Mr. Bailey, if you're going to be a writer, you're going to need to secure your work a little... Yeah, I'm learning that the hard way, Connor said. Look, something terrible's happened in the fairy tale world, and we need my stories to save it. I'm sure you have a million questions, but like Connor said, we're really crunched for time right now, Alex added. You know, If you know where they are, could you just please point us in the right direction? A lot of people are depending on us. From the tone of their voices and the urgency in their eyes, Mrs. Peters could tell that they were very serious, so she didn't question them further. Well, you're in luck, she said. I happen to have them with me. Mrs. Peters retrieved her purse from under the desk and pulled a large binder out of it. She flipped through the binder, and the twins saw it filled with hundreds of student essays, math tests, book reports, history exams, and artwork. Today was my last day before retirement, Mrs. Peters said. I cleaned out my desk and I found this. It's a collection I kept over the years of students' work that made me the most proud to be an educator. Whenever I had a particularly rough day, I would look through this and I would be inspired all over again. And when she reached the end of the binder, Mrs. Peters unclipped it and handed Connor a stack of papers in messy handwriting. These are your short stories, Mr. Bailey, she said. The twins sighed with relief, and after a long search, they had finally found them. Connor tried taking them out of Mrs. Peters' hands, but she tightened her grip. I'll only give you these if you make me a solemn promise, she said. He's going to do whatever you want, Alex said desperately, and Connor nodded. Yeah, no, I mean, what she said. Mrs. Peters looked straight into his eyes. When the troubling chapter of your life comes to an end, promise me that you'll go back to school and you'll continue writing, she said. Connor was expecting something much worse than that. Okay, I promise, he said. Good, she said. The world needs writers like you to inspire them, Mr. Bailey. Don't take your talent for granted, and don't let it go to waste. Mrs. Peters released the grip on the papers, and Connor's short stories were finally in his possession. Alex was thankful that it had been such an easy exchange. She'd been prepared to hex Mrs. Peters with a paralyzing spell if she really needed to. I'm happy I made it into your binder, Connor said. I never thought I'd say this, Mr. Bailey, but you are the closest thing to a favorite student that I'll ever have, she confessed. Me? Connor said. But why? Yeah, why? Alex said before she could stop herself. With all due respect, Miss Bailey, when I'm old and my memory fades, I won't remember the students who got the best grades or had the best attendance, Mrs. Peters said. I'll remember the ones who progressed the most, and your brother's come a long way from taking naps in my class. I don't think I progressed any more than anyone else did, Connor said with a shrug. That's because no one has the privilege of looking at themselves through someone else's eyes, Mrs. Peters said. I watched you struggle after your father died, but you didn't let yourself struggle for long. Rather than wallowing in grief, you developed a strong sense of humor. And soon, I was constantly condemning your clown antics in class. The following year, I became the principal, and I had a feeling there was a remarkable imagination behind that wit. I had your teacher send me samples of your creative writing, and my suspicion was right. You chose to grow from tragedy, and it takes a very strong person to do that. Alex smiled proudly at her brother. Connor's whole face turned bright. He was good at taking compliments as Mrs. Peters was. He was as good at taking compliments as Mrs. Peters was. Ah, shucks, he said. I guess I'm more sophisticated than I thought. You'd be surprised, Mrs. Peters said. I learned a lot about you from your writing. Possibly more than you intended to share with me, but perhaps as you look through your stories again, you'll learn a thing or two about yourself. This made Connor a little nervous. How much of himself had he exposed? When he wrote, Connor only worried about telling a good story. He never thought about the fingerprints that he left between the lines. He suddenly felt like he was in the shower and he had forgotten to lock the bathroom door. Thank you, Mrs. Peters, Connor said. For what it's worth, you've always been my favorite too. I never would have liked writing if it weren't for you. Mrs. Peters was so happy that she had stumbled onto the Bailey twins tonight. Knowing she helped shape the twins into the wonderful and responsible young adults that they'd become was the greatest retirement gift that she could have received. She put the binder back in her purse and then glanced up at the clock. It was disheartening to see that the new teacher had obnoxiously decorated the clock to look like the sun. I can't believe it's past midnight, Mrs. Peters said. I'm absolutely exhausted, so if you'll both excuse me, I think I'll head. And with another gust of wind and a flash of light, the Bailey twins disappeared into thin air. It made Mrs. Peters laugh because their quick exit confirmed something she believed with her whole heart. Students, she said. They come and go so quickly. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so that was the prologue. Tomorrow, we will read chapter 1 of this story. That was an adorable prologue and so sweet. So sweet. We're gonna go have breakfast and then continue on the journey of our day. Maybe we'll have baby book club later because we have a lot of new books to read. That would be fun. We also have to finish our unboxing. And I will see you all for that. I hope you have dinner. That's so crazy, Isabella. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I know. Mrs. Peters is like, she's awesome. Yeah. All right. Bye, guys.